The email sat in my inbox like a digital tombstone. Unsubscribe. That's all it said from Travel Vanguard Holdings. No explanation, no apology, just a final, definitive severing of ties. For 3 days, I'd been trying to get a response, a confirmation, anything beyond the automated replies that had become suspiciously frequent. The calls went straight to voicemail, the numbers disconnected. My gut, which had been churning with a mix of excitement and unease since the initial contact, now plunged into a cold, terrifying void. They had ghosted us. Completely. Utterly. Without a trace.
Hello, I'm Truly. If this is your first time or you're a frequent listener on my channel, welcome. If you haven't done it already, do not forget to like, subscribe, and click the notify button to listen to more stories in the future. Thank you.
The dread was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. How was I going to tell them? Leo, my 12-year-old, had already started a countdown on the kitchen whiteboard. Maya, 9, had picked out her swimsuits and packed a special bag of beach toys 3 times already. And little Finn, 5, just vibrated with the simple, pure joy of going on an airplane trip. I'd seen their faces light up when I told them, the promises I'd inadvertently made ringing hollow in my ears. An all-expense-paid family vacation, a dream come true for a dad who mixed dad life with business. They wanted feel-good content. Well, this felt like anything but. Sarah found me hunched over my laptop, staring blankly at the screen. She didn't need to ask. My shoulders were slumped, my face probably ashen. It's gone, isn't it? Her voice was soft, already laced with the same disappointment that was curdling in my stomach. I just nodded, pushing the laptop away as if it were contaminated. She sat beside me, putting a comforting hand on my knee. The kids, she began, her voice trailing off. That was the real gut punch. Not the lost trip, not the financial hit because there wasn't one technically, but the crushing weight of their shattered expectations, their trust. I don't know how to tell them, Sarah, I admitted, the words thick in my throat. I built it up so much. They were so excited. We waited until dinner, the news too heavy to carry through the afternoon. The kids were buzzing, recounting plans for building sandcastles and spotting dolphins. Only 3 more weeks, Dad, Leo declared, beaming. Maya chimed in, can we bring my seashell collection home? Finn just giggled, spooning more mac and cheese into his mouth. My heart ached. Sarah took a deep breath, meeting my eyes. Kids, she started, her voice a little shaky. Dad and I have something to tell you. The room instantly quieted. Finn's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. 3 pairs of expectant eyes fixed on us. I cleared my throat, forcing the words out. Remember the trip we were going on? The one the company was sponsoring? They all nodded, anticipation making their little bodies stiffen. Well, the company, they've changed their minds. They're not going to be able to sponsor it anymore. Silence. Deafening, heartbreaking silence. Then, Finn's bottom lip began to wobble. No airplane trip? He whispered, his eyes welling up. Maya's face crumpled immediately, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. Leo, ever the stoic, just looked at me. A deep, knowing sadness etched across his young face. He didn't cry, but his shoulders sagged, and he pushed his plate away. I'm so sorry, guys, I choked out, a wave of guilt washing over me. I really thought this was going to happen. The rest of dinner was a quiet, mournful affair. No amount of apologies or reassurances could mend their broken hopes. It was a failure on my part, a promise unfulfilled. That night, sleep was an elusive luxury. I tossed and turned, replaying their faces, the quiet disappointment, the tears. The sponsor's words echoed in my mind. Feel-good content that reflects real life. Real life. What was more real than a family facing disappointment? But what about the feel-good part? Then, an idea, crazy and audacious, began to form. We weren't going on the sponsored trip. Fine. But what if we went on our own trip? Not the luxury resort in Florida, no. That was out of the question. But what if we took the spirit of adventure, the idea of family bonding, and stripped away all the pretense? What if we made our own feel-good content, powered purely by grit and imagination? I nudged Sarah awake. The Grand Canyon, I whispered. She blinked at me, dazed. What? The Grand Canyon, or Yellowstone, anywhere out west. A road trip. No flights, no fancy hotels, just us, the minivan, and a tent. She stared at me in the dim light, finally understanding. Are you serious? On what budget? We don't have spending money from a sponsor anymore, remember? Exactly, I said, sitting up, my mind racing. That's the point. It'll be an unsponsored adventure. We'll pack sandwiches, listen to audiobooks, find cheap campgrounds, maybe even sleep in the car if we have to. It'll be tough, sure, but it'll be ours. We'll make memories that Travel Vanguard could never buy. Her initial skepticism slowly melted into a hesitant smile. It's an idea, a very you idea. The next morning, presenting the new plan to the kids was a different challenge. So the fancy trip is off, I started, getting straight to the point. But that doesn't mean adventure is off the table. I pulled out a map, spreading it across the kitchen table. Instead of flying over the country to a beach, how about we drive across it to see something truly incredible? I pointed to the jagged outline of the Grand Canyon. No plush beds, no room service, just endless sky, ancient earth and us. We'll camp under the stars, cook over a fire, maybe even see some elk or bison. Leo, who had been listening with a wary expression, leaned closer. Like a real adventure? No more fake stuff? Exactly, I grinned. No fake stuff. This is hardcore, real-life, dirty hands adventure. We'll face challenges, figure things out, and tell stories about it for the rest of our lives. Maya, wiping a lingering tear from her cheek, looked up. We can bring marshmallows for the fire? Absolutely, Sarah chimed in, catching my enthusiasm. And we'll sing ridiculous songs in the car, and play I Spy, and see who can spot the most license plates. Finn, still a little confused about the distinction between airplane trip and car trip, simply clapped his hands. Camping, he yelled, bouncing in his seat. The shift in their demeanor was palpable. The disappointment hadn't vanished entirely, but it was being slowly, surely, replaced by a spark of something new, a genuine, unmanufactured excitement for the unknown. The weeks leading up to our departure were a blur of budget planning, route mapping, and frantic packing. The shiny new suitcases were swapped for dusty old duffel bags. The kids, once dreaming of resort pools, were now excitedly researching constellations and sketching animals they hoped to see. We pulled out the battered old family tent from the garage, checked the air in the minivan's tires, and filled a cooler with more sandwiches than any family of 5 should reasonably consume. Our departure was unceremonious, a sharp contrast to the imagined airport fanfare. No professional videographers capturing our feel-good content. Just a minivan loaded to the brim, the kids squabbling good-naturedly in the back, and the open road stretching before us. The first few hours were predictably messy. Finn needed a bathroom break every 20 minutes. Maya complained about Leo's singing, and I realized I'd left my favorite camp mug on the counter. But as the miles rolled by, something shifted. The landscape began to change, stretching out into vast, humbling plains. The kids started pointing out unusual landmarks, their bickering replaced by shared observations. We listened to an audiobook about pioneers, and suddenly, our humble road trip felt connected to something bigger, something inherently American. The first night, we pulled into a basic campsite in rural Nebraska. The air was crisp, the stars a dazzling, unfiltered canvas above us. As we fumbled with tent poles, laughing at our clumsy attempts, a sense of rightness settled over me. This wasn't the picture-perfect, curated content Travel Vanguard had wanted. This was real. This was a family, bruised but not broken, finding its own way, creating its own adventure. And as Finn snuggled into his sleeping bag, whispering about the bright moon, and Leo quietly hummed the audiobook's theme song, I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that this UN-sponsored adventure was going to be better than anything money could buy. The next morning, the Nebraska sun streamed through the tent fabric, a warm golden glow replacing the cool starlight. We woke to the chirping of unseen birds and the distant lowing of cattle. Sarah was already up, tending to a small portable stove, the aroma of instant coffee and sizzling bacon filling the crisp air. Leo was sketching in his notebook, eyes fixed on a lone windmill on the horizon, while Maya and Finn were engaged in an intense game of I Spy with their breakfast cereal. Morning campers, Sarah said, her smile brighter than any Instagram filter. Best sleep I've had in ages, I admitted, stretching out the kinks in my back. The ground had been hard, but the air clean and the silence profound. No city hum, no traffic, just the vast quiet of the plains. Our days quickly settled into a rhythm dictated by the sun and our ever-present hunger. We drove through vast cornfields, the landscape slowly shifting as we ventured west. The minivan, once a simple mode of transport, became our mobile command center, a rolling classroom, and a cozy haven. We'd pull over at roadside attractions, a giant ball of twine, a quirky museum dedicated to barbed wire, a national park visitor center. and each stop became an impromptu lesson. Leo, the budding scientist, would rattle off facts about geology. Maya, the storyteller, would invent elaborate backstories for every historical marker, and Finn, the little adventurer, would simply run, full of unbridled joy. One afternoon, deep in the Badlands of South Dakota, our journey hit its first real snag. The minivan, bless its tired heart, sputtered to a halt, a red light glowing ominously on the dashboard. Panic, sharp and cold, tried to assert itself. This was the kind of scenario Travel Vanguard would have had a crisis team for, a prearranged roadside assistance package. Here, it was just us, miles from the nearest town, with 3 increasingly restless children. "What's wrong, Dad?" Leo asked, his voice betraying a hint of worry. "Just a little hiccup, buddy," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Sarah, ever the pragmatic one, was already checking the manual, her brow furrowed in concentration. Hours later, after a surprisingly friendly local mechanic from a town called Wall had coaxed our minivan back to life with a replaced fuel pump, we were on our way again. The delay had eaten into our daylight, and we ended up setting up our tent well after dusk, guided by the beams of our headlamps. Building the tent in the dark, fighting off encroaching mosquitoes, and fumbling with sleeping bags, it was far from glamorous. But as we finally snuggled into our respective cocoons, a strange sense of victory filled the air. We'd faced a challenge, and we'd overcome it together. There wasn't a single complaint about missing TV or about Wi-Fi, just the quiet rustle of the tent fabric and the gentle breathing of my family. The next few days were a blur of national parks, vast open skies, and growing interconnectedness. We hiked through towering red rock formations in Utah, the kids marveling at the sheer scale of nature, their voices echoing in the canyons. We counted prairie dogs in Wyoming, watched a herd of bison lumber across a distant plain, and stood awestruck beneath the colossal granite faces of Mount Rushmore, a monument to a different kind of American adventure. There was one evening, high in the Rockies, where we built a roaring campfire. The air was crisp, the scent of pine needles strong, and the stars were so numerous they looked like glitter scattered across black velvet. We didn't have cell service, and the glow of the fire was the only light for miles around. I started telling a silly story about a daring squirrel, and soon Sarah joined in, then Leo, adding their own fantastical twists. Maya and Finn were wide-eyed, captivated, their imaginations soaring. It wasn't about performing or recording, it was just us, sharing something pure and unscripted. It was in moments like these that the burnt toast theory truly hit home. This wasn't the polished, marketable adventure of Travel Vanguard. This was deeper, richer, the kind that reshapes you from the inside out. The last few days of our trip were spent meandering through the Pacific Northwest, tracing rivers and forests, before finally turning east again. We were dirtier, our clothes perpetually wrinkled, but we were also leaner, our eyes brighter, our spirits lighter. The bickering had largely ceased, replaced by inside jokes and shared memories. Leo had abandoned his video games for a journal filled with intricate drawings of wildlife. Maya, who once couldn't go 10 minutes without her tablet, was now an expert at spotting constellations. Finn, our littlest explorer, had learned to tie a knot and identify 3 different types of trees. On our final night, camped near a quiet lake, my family gathered around the minivan, its tires now caked with mud, its interior littered with maps, empty snack wrappers, and the detritus of 1,000 joyful moments. I looked at Sarah, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a battery lantern, her eyes reflecting the contentment that had become our constant companion. I looked at our children, their faces smudged with dirt, their hair tangled, but radiating a kind of quiet confidence I hadn't seen before. "Remember when the minivan broke down?" Finn piped up, giggling. "And we thought we were stranded forever," Maya added. "But we figured it out, didn't we?" Leo said, a touch of pride in his voice. I smiled, a warmth spreading through my chest. They weren't just remembering a mishap, they were remembering overcoming it. They were remembering growth. We had just come back from the most unforgettable week together as a family. No deliverables, no inbox stress, no pressure to perform. Just laughs, long hikes, late-night movies, amazing food, and actual presence. That's when the concept I once read about, the burnt toast theory, came back to me. The idea that the things that seem to go wrong might actually be protecting you from something worse or guiding you towards something better. Travel Vanguard Holdings had ghosted me. I didn't get the brand deal, and I didn't even get a sorry, but I ended up getting something infinitely better. I got my family back, not just in proximity, but in spirit. I got to see them thrive in the wild, stripped of distractions. I got to rediscover the raw, unpolished, beautiful adventure of simply being. And as we pulled into our driveway, the minivan groaning in protest, I knew with absolute certainty that this unsponsored, uncurated, messy, magnificent journey was the greatest deal I'd ever closed. We unloaded the minivan, our house suddenly feeling too big after weeks of living in close quarters. The familiar scent of home was comforting, a blend of freshly laundered linen and simmering dinner, but it carried a faint echo of the wild, of pine needles and campfire smoke. The kids, though tired and grimy, still buzzed with stories, recounting moments with a vividness that spoke to how deeply they'd imprinted. Ben immediately dove for his art supplies, determined to draw the bison he'd seen. Maya started narrating an epic tale of our journey to her stuffed animals, while Leo, surprisingly, pulled out a stack of books on national parks, already planning our next adventure. Then, walking into my office, the very space where I'd agonized over the Travel Vanguard deal, where I'd meticulously crafted pitches and worried about engagement rates, I saw the blinking light on my desk phone. A message. Sifting through a handful of physical mail, now dwarfed by the sheer volume of digital correspondence I'd been ignoring, I found a thick envelope, handwritten. The voicemail was from an editor at a respected outdoor lifestyle magazine, curious if I'd be interested in contributing. A series of authentic family adventure pieces, inspired by some photos Sarah had quietly shared on her personal social media. The envelope contained an offer from a small, values-aligned outdoor gear company, asking me to collaborate on a campaign focused on genuine experiences, not staged perfection. No aggressive ROI demands, no frantic content schedules, just an invitation to share our story, truly. It hit me then, the full circle of it all. While I was offline, truly living, letting go of the need to control or monetize every moment, the universe had orchestrated something far better, far more aligned with who I actually wanted to be. The algorithm could indeed wait. The emails could wait. My kids, and the memories we'd made, the messy breakdowns, the starry campfires, the spontaneous lessons, the shared triumphs, had delivered the greatest return of all. They had unlocked a different kind of success, one measured in laughter, connection, and the quiet satisfaction of a life truly lived.